helps those of us whose schedules don't let us attend synchronously in person really, really appreciate it. And as Mala mentioned, my name is Matthew Roche. I'm a program manager on the Power BI team at Microsoft. I am on Twitter. I do have a blog. And a lot of the topics that are going to be part of this conversation today, I have blog posts that touch on similar topics or concepts. But this is probably the most personal presentation that I have ever done in my 25 years of being a data and technical professional. So from an introduction perspective, I want to provide a few content warnings. So at some point, I'm probably going to swear. This is sort of my authentic self coming through. I'm not going to do it graciously, but odds are I will swear more than once during this session. If this will be a problem for you, please consider yourself warned, but this is me. This is what you get. It's also possible that at some point during this presentation, I will cry. I'm telling stories that are very emotional and very close to me. And I'm doing it because I believe that it's important and I believe that it's valuable to have these conversations. But just be aware there may be emotionally charged moments during this conversation, during the session. And then the final warning is I've taken a bunch of superhero pictures that I am using to build on this unleashing your personal superhero or unleashing your personal superpower motif that is the theme of this session. So just be aware that if you, like me, have put on pandemic pounds, you may feel inspired to get back to the gym or maybe change your pandemic diet to fit back into your leather superhero costumes after the session is done. So also, I don't own any of the pictures. There are credits for all of the pictures that I have, but just keep in mind that I've stolen them from the internet and don't have permissions to use them. I consider this to be fair use. Now, when Mala reached out asking me if I would be interested and willing to participate in this event, I said yes right away, but I honestly didn't know what I was going to talk about. And the reason that I ended up on this theme of unleashing your personal superpower, it comes from a tweet that Greta Thunberg, the environmental activist and awesome person that I assume everybody already knows, back in 2019, when she was going head to head with one of the most powerful and poisonous people in the world, she basically posted haters gonna hate, but I know that I'm different and being different can be a superpower in the right circumstances. And she then went on to elaborate saying, so her Asperger's diagnosis, that she's been very public about it, not to hide behind it, not to use it as an excuse for her behavior, but just to be open about it and to say, this is who I am, this is where I'm coming from, this is my true authentic self. And she went on, and I'm not going to include all of this, but she also went on to say that her Asperger's has limited her and has been a negative factor in her life. But if you look at this amazing young woman, she's 16, 17 years old, she is changing the world through her activism, through her actions, through her words. She's able to do this because she has embraced who she is and the abilities that her unique self give her to do things that other people cannot or will not do. And what an empowering message, what an empowering example that each of us can follow. But to be honest with you, when Mala reached out to me, I didn't know this. I didn't know the quote. I didn't know the story. I knew who Greta was as a person and as an activist, but it wasn't until I got a Twitter message from an old work friend of mine that I connected the dots and knew the story that I wanted to tell today. Now, this person, who I will not identify, I want to be respectful of their privacy, he basically reached out to me saying, Thank you for being open and public about your challenges with mental health. And he called back to one of the first times that we'd met. And the interesting thing for me is that I had never thought of him as nervous. I had never seen like anything like awkward or strange about his behavior, but he's basically saying it's like, yeah, well, we were waiting to get into the Microsoft buildings because it was before I worked for Microsoft, but we were basically at Building 40, Redmond campus, as subject matter experts for the early stages of what eventually became the Microsoft Certified Master Program for SQL Server. So this is, many, many years ago. And he called out to me that at the time, he was really struggling with anxiety, with imposter syndrome. He didn't feel like he belonged. And he wanted to say both thank you and this is why you may have noticed me acting strangely back in the day. And of course, at the time, I was feeling very similar things. And he was one of those amazing world-class experts that I felt out of place being in the same room and working on the same projects as him. And as we were talking, he put out to me something that made me realize what I wanted to talk about today, which is that the strengths that people have are almost always the opposite side, like the other side of the coin for what they perceive as their personal weaknesses. And with this as the conversation, I knew exactly what I wanted to talk about. I wasn't sure what shape the story would take, but this is how I knew. And I also should clarify, I'm not protecting this person's identity because of his openness about his bipolar disorder diagnosis or anything related to mental health. The other thing that he reached out to me about was to ask, is the band Creed heavy metal? So it's kind of embarrassing, so I'm not gonna go down that path. Won't name and shame in that regard. But I do want to highlight the reason that he reached out to me is because back in 2018, I published this blog post about the importance of being open and talking about mental health. This is really when I was first being more open, both with myself, with my family, and with my team about some of the challenges that I've had since I was an adolescent. So it wasn't until I was well into my 40s, like, pushing 50, that I really realized that all of the things that I'd struggled with and that had caused me no dearth of problems. Like these are like the ongoing challenges and the reasons that I am not in a better place today. I started being more open, and because other people being more open, more communicative about their mental health challenges was really instrumental for me recognizing what was going on inside my own brain, that this was why I knew that I needed to be more open and honest, to use the platform that I have to be part of the solution, not part of the problem. And I have had thousands of people read the blog post, and I've had scores of people like have their lives changed by it. Like it's changed the way that they think about themselves and their world. And I know this because they reach out to me. I get Twitter messages, I get emails at work, I get comments on the blog post from people saying, thank you for being open here. And very often they will also say, I'm not in a position where I can be this open and honest. I'm not safe. I'm not comfortable. I'm not confident enough to do that yet. But I did want to say, thank you for the openness. And knowing that not only was this awareness something that changed my life, but that it's actually made the difference in the lives of others, that is really the motivation. It's the reason why I said yes when I learned about this amazing event today. Now, with this said, you were promised superpowers. Let's talk about superpowers. And when I think about superpowers, I think about my younger self, like 16-year-old Matthew, just got his first job, spending his first paychecks at the comic book store, back in the 80s. And it was the X-Men that was one of the comic book series that I fell in love with. And I'm going to be using pictures from the recent movies today rather than comic book images, because I think that most people today are more familiar with this version of the X-Men. But let's think about the X-Men and put them into context. So in this Marvel universe, the X-Men and mutants in general are persecuted. They're misunderstood. They are the people that are different and strange and not wanted. They're the people that the authorities want to cure and to change, to make them normal, just like everybody else. And the journey that each one of these mutant superheroes is on resonates with me one way or another, because they really sound familiar. So if you look in the back between Wolverine and Storm, I can't remember his name off the top of my head, but it's like Ice Guy, right? His superpower is he can freeze things. Now, imagine how useless this would be if you woke up in the morning and you realize that, I can make my drink cold. It's neat, but what can you do with it? But in the right context, it's a power that can provide great capabilities and great strength to him and the broader team that he's part of. Or if you think about Wolverine, who's the front and center big masculine hero, you think about him, he's like this fighting machine. He's got these claws. He's got like healing powers. But think about what his power does and look at it through his eyes. Anytime that his claws come out, they are ripping, they're like violently cutting through his skin, through his flesh. Every time that his claws extend, it's like the cool scene in the movie. It's the fight scene in the comic book. But imagine how much that hurts. Not like he doesn't feel pain. When he uses his power, this is something that causes him agony and struggle. It's something that he has to decide to do, and there's always a cost to do it. But rather than focusing on them, I actually want to focus on Rogue. So when I was, again, going back to my teenage years, Rogue's powers seemed like the absolute coolest powers to have, because when you're thinking about, I'm a superhero, I'm going to fight all these super villains, and with my powers, I can steal the powers of any other superhero, right? So I can fly, I can shoot lightning, I can do the Magneto does, and from a cool tactical perspective, this sounds really, really useful. But step back here. Think about being a young woman growing up or a young person growing up, and the things that you do by default when you reach out to someone, when you try to be close and have a relationship with someone, you're putting them at risk, you're hurting them. Or, if you read the comic books, part of her backstory is the first boy that she kissed, she almost killed, because it's that physical contact stealing their powers or stealing their energy. But if you have mental health challenges, if you suffer with depression or anxiety, you know that there are some things that come naturally to you that can hurt the people that are around you. My anxiety, my default reaction is anger. So when my anxiety is acting up, I am angry all the time. And I know that there have been times in my 25 years of marriage that I have spoken hurtfully to my wife. I've probably done the same thing to my children. And the care and the caution that Rogue has to take to make sure that she doesn't hurt the people that are around her superpowers, that really, as an adult looking back, it really resonates with me, and I commiserate with her. And what I wish is that when I was learning about powers that I have, which we'll get to in a bit, that I had someone like Jean-Luc Picard, that I had someone like Professor Charles Xavier. Professor X in the X-Men books, he is this mentor, he is this guide, he is this leader that works with mutants. He finds them, he brings them to his school to teach them, but it's not like he can say to Freezy Ice Guy, this is what you need to do with your Freezy stuff, with your Freezy powers. It's not like he can say to Rogue, this is how you use your specific power in a specific way, because he doesn't have their powers. He has other powers, but his real value in this equation, in this story, is that he understands and can help people learn who they are, what they do, how they work, by providing them a safe place where they can explore and learn about themselves. And this is one of the things that it feels glossed over in the stories, but it's one of the things that seems most important in this whole end-to-end example, or the whole end-to-end context, which is that Professor Xavier, he has this school for gifted youngsters. So he has this place where the mutant teenagers in his story can come in and safely learn about themselves while surrounded by people who are like but different from them, because they all have their own powers, but each one of them is different. But they know that they can be honest about who they are and what they do. And this safe place is absolutely vital for them to explore those things that make them uniquely themselves. And once they have that safe place, they also have a dangerous place. And I couldn't find any screenshots. I don't know if this actually shows up in the movies at all. So I had to find this article from some old magazine that showed the Danger Room, which is a key part of the X-Men training facilities back in the comic books, where this is basically a dangerous place where they can set up these risky simulations so that you can use your powers at full force, so that you can, fight these simulated bad guys and actually have to do it right, to use your powers to great effect, and to do it in such a way that if you don't know what you're doing, you're at risk. But once you've found that safe place and you can explore who you are and what you can do, this is how you push yourself. This is how you grow. This is how you explore your limits, because you are being pushed out of your safety zone or your comfort zone. And as we shift from the fictional context to talking about something that's a little bit more personal, I actually want to share this quote from Violence Expert, which is a thing. So if you look up Rory Miller, you'll understand more about this. But Rory Miller is an author and martial artist who has written a lot about violence in the real world. And back in 2014, he had a blog post about teaching and coaching for self-defense. So not martial arts, not the people who want to come in and learn how to fight so they can win tournaments and like the not real world stuff that I do, but personal defense, where someone would come in to learn how to not get beaten up anymore, where someone could come in to feel safe and no longer have to constrain their day-to-day activities because they fear for their personal safety. So in those self-defense or personal defense contexts, Rory says that as a coach, as someone who teaches and trains and runs a training facility, that the first thing that you need to do is you need to make an emotionally safe place for people to practice physically dangerous. So you need to bring in these people who have only been on the receiving end of violence before, and to bring them in to let them know that this is a place where they can do these new challenging things to learn and to grow. But then once these students have mastered the physical things, then you need to give them the physically safe place so that they can do the emotionally dangerous things that previously they weren't ready to do. And sorry, I warned you about the tears. So this to me is really, really deeply personal, because in order to go out of your comfort zone when it matters, you need to know that you're safe. You can't stretch, you can't reach, you can't grow until you know that you're in a place today where you can grow from. And because this is about personal superpowers, I want the bridge here to be a little bit about me. And I emphasize today, I am in the most amazing, safe place that you can imagine. I have a job and a team and a role where I can bring my true, authentic self and know that I will be appreciated and valued for who I am and for what I do. And none of this, none of anything that I do would be possible without that. And the growth and success that we need, this comes from being in a position of safety and trust. And that safety and trust comes from bringing your authentic self, because if you're not being who you actually are, nothing else can begin. You're not starting with that place of honesty. And when I think about origin stories, like superhero origin stories, there's always this one moment that changes everything, right? Whether it's thinking about Spider-Man, where it wasn't getting bitten by the radioactive spider, it was him letting the bad guy go, and the bad guy ended up killing his Uncle Ben, like his father figure. This was the moment that defined Spider-Man as the hero that he became. And when I think about my origin story, I think back to the summer of 2018. I had been on my current team, the Power BI customer advisory team, for probably 4 to 6 months. So I joined in March. This was sometime over the summer. And I was struggling. So I'm not going to talk about home or family stuff or anything like that, but it was like a difficult family summer. As a parent of teenagers, if you've ever had teenagers, you'll probably understand some of the challenges that can come up. And there were other environmental factors, like there's construction going on in my building at work. And the first 2 or 3 hours of my day were like jackhammers, like literal jackhammers on the other side of the wall. And this was before I had realized some of the sensory sensitivity issues that I have. But basically, one day, my boss, who is an absolute fucking rock star, so there's this in no way is designed to speak poorly on him, but he basically came in and said, "What the hell are you doing? So you were doing so great, and now it's like you've stopped. What's going on? What's wrong? You need to do these things." And it was the moment where I had been there, paralyzed. My anxiety is through the roof. I'm like living in this day-long panic attack, day in and day out, but I didn't have the words for it. I didn't know how to tell the people that needed to know what I was going through. And for most of my career, if I had mental health challenges, if I was depressed, if I was having a panic attack, I would talk about my allergies or my migraines or other such things. I would come up with some evasive excuse to avoid the real problem. And I'd take a day or two off, I'd come back, I'd figure out what was going on, and I'd make it work. But I was never honest with myself or with the world about what was really going on. And when my boss came in and basically said, "What the hell is going on?" I told him, it's like, "Look, I'm having these challenges. I struggle with anxiety. And this basically means that when I'm looking at this blank email, it's like, it's like there's the police lights in the rear view mirror. It's like the knocking at the door. It's my mother telling me that my father's going to be home in an hour, and boy, am I in trouble. It's knowing that the test is tomorrow and I haven't studied for it." It's like all of these things happening at once. And not only did he not get it, because it suffer from anxiety. You know, if you're always been colorblind and can't tell the difference between red and green, how do you understand that? And if you've never suffered from anxiety, if you've never had depression that keeps you from getting out of bed for a week at a time, even though you can listen, you can't understand. And the thing that changed my life was this amazing man who didn't get it. He trusted me. He stepped back and basically said, what do you need? And how can we as a team make you be successful? And later that week, I sent out an email to my team basically saying, it's like, hey, I've got this shit going on. And if it seems like I'm not running on all cylinders, if it feels like I'm not delivering the way that you're used to me delivering, or if it seems like I'm grumpy and angry, I'm sorry, it's my anxiety. I'm working on it, but be aware that I've got this stuff going on. And that conversation and that email changed my life, because from that point on, I wasn't trying to pretend that the thing that was actually causing me problems, I don't want to say the thing that was wrong, but the thing that was challenging me, I had always previously pretended that it was something else. And that kept me from addressing it. It kept me from being honest about it. From that moment, I could be honest and admit that maybe I had superpowers. And if that seems like a segue, let's go back. Let's go back to that Twitter conversation that started off the slides, where my work friend said that in his experience, people's strengths and weaknesses are the same things, just expressed differently. As I started thinking more and more about that, I realized that my first superpower was fear. Not the ability to instill fear, but the fact that most of the things that I do every day since I have been in adolescence, or probably since I was 12 or 13, I'm scared all the time. If I'm going into a conversation, this huge level of anxiety about it. If I'm going into a meeting or a presentation, all of the things that I do all day, every day, they freak me out. And I'm in my 50s. I've been a data and IT professional for more than half of my life at this point. I have figured out coping mechanisms to deal with this. And I have reason to believe that most people don't see that fear and that anxiety that is a core part of my day in and day out life. But the reason for that is that this fear that is a key part of my every waking moment has given me the ability to be proactive, to be prepared, to arm myself so that I can overcome that fear and be successful. And if you look at the wall behind me, you can see a small subset of my collection of swords. And I told Kathy that I wasn't going to mention this, but it's fitting in as the story tells itself. But basically, if I'm going into a sword fighting tournament, so if I am competing full contact, full speed, opportunity for broken bones and who knows what else, I will spend weeks and months preparing and training and practicing and fighting as much as I can. Boy, do I miss that. But also in the moments before my pool, my fight, I will put on the protective gear. So I put on the jacket, test the cup, put on the helmet, make sure that my elbow protection and my throat protection are in place. All of these things to make sure that when I walk into the ring and there is nothing but me and my weapon and my opponent and his weapon between my success and my failure, that I have done everything that I can to prepare and that I have all of the tools and all of the gear that I need. This is the same mindset that takes me into every single meeting and every single conversation. And it wasn't until preparing for this talk that I realized that in the morning, as I'm looking at my calendar and creating a new page in OneNote for every meeting that I have, writing down in advance, these are my goals, these are the talking points, these are the things that I need to get to make this meeting a success, that this is something that other people don't do. And this is one of the things that makes me more successful in my engagements. And it's something where if I'm in a meeting, if I'm leading the meeting, I share my screen and I take notes, and I'm doing it because I need to do it, because I am in such a heightened state of anxiety. I'm not going to remember any of the conversation because I'm like so stressed. I'm so full of stress hormones that my memory just isn't working correctly. And this is, a well-known side effect of serious anxiety. So I take notes, and by taking the notes in a shared context or like on the screen, and back in the before times, they would be projected up on the wall so that everybody could see them. It's a way to ensure that we're all on the same page, and that scripting that I do in advance, thinking about what I'm going to say, the questions that I need to ask, the things that I need to learn. I wouldn't do any of these things were it not for that fear. Because if I wasn't afraid of the meeting, why would I over prepare like this, right? So it's just one of those things that, because of this challenge that I face, I have developed a skill, a superpower that allows me to do amazing things that others on the team can't or don't do because they've never been forced by their brains to do it. And if you're saying it's like, yeah, note taking, not really a superpower, right? One of the things that I do for work is I have designed and run a program for enterprise customer feedback. One of the things that we do is each new customer member, I'm going to say hi, Chewy, because I know that you're on the phone, and I know that you are probably the one enterprise voice member that is watching me live. But each new member that joins the program, we have this structured conversation with them where we ask some high-level open-ended questions. We take notes. The note taker takes notes. And this is then used to form a body of knowledge that is an input into the Power BI planning process. So that note-taking skill that I had developed as a compensatory mechanism for the way that my brain is slowly trying to kill me, it has changed the way that we ship Power BI, and it's become a key part of what my team and I do. And it wouldn't have been possible without fear being one of my superpowers. Another superpower, which again, at first glance may not seem like it, is confusion. And I don't understand people. To be more specific, I don't understand how other people work. And it's often very, very difficult for me to understand the relationship between my actions and other people's reactions. And this is, I'm not going to put any names on it. So I don't have a diagnosis to share. But the thing that I found is that there's always some sort of subtext that everybody else seems to understand that I just can't see. There's something going on. It's kind of like dark matter. So for physicists, dark matter is something that cannot be directly observed and measured, but they know that it's there because they can observe and measure its effects. This is kind of like what other people's motivations are like for me. And there are people that I work with that I know and love and appreciate that they're people. They understand this, they get it. This is not a challenge for them. For me, it's always hard. And for the longest time, this confusion was something that I would really struggle with. I would spend a lot of time and a lot of effort. I would burn a ton of calories trying to figure out what the hell is going on. And in recent years, what I've started doing is just bringing that confusion to the surface and not giving it a place to hide. So if I'm in a meeting and I don't understand what the hell we're talking about, I will say, what's the purpose of this meeting? What are we trying to do here? It's like, where does this fit into the bigger picture? Or what exactly are you asking for us? How does this prioritize against other things? I ask all of the annoying questions that I've learned everybody else wanted to ask but was afraid to ask. And how do I know this? I know this because people, again, in the before times when we would get together in the hallway walking between meetings, people would come up to me and say, thank you for asking those questions. I had them, but I didn't dare ask them myself because I figured that it would make me look stupid. And I would rather look stupid today than look stupid 6 months from now because I didn't ask the right questions today. But again, it comes from that position of safety and confidence. And one of the things that comes out of this confusion and the inability to read other people is that I have developed this muscle memory, this reflex to say, boy, so I think this is what you're saying, and I'll paraphrase it back to them, and I will say something to the effect of, now, is that actually what you meant, or did you mean something different, or is there something important that I didn't include? And this paraphrasing and having that explicit question to say, am I actually understanding you? Again, it changed my life. It's something that not only has become a part of my daily routine that I now do consciously and deliberately, it's something that allows me to more effectively understand what the heck is going on. And I had, after a big customer event that I helped run last week, one of the customer participants pinged me on Teams and said, I'm reading from my notes here, you do a phenomenal job of taking incredibly complex and verbose topics and providing a concise summary. And first of all, thank you very much. That type of feedback is always appreciated. But the reason I'm able to do this is because leading up to those conversations and those meetings and those events is I'm the guy saying, I don't know what the hell is going on here. How does this thing relate to this thing? And I ask the annoying questions because I honestly don't get it. But by the time that it comes for telling the story and having the broader engagement, my ability to ask those questions and to express my confusion in a constructive way, it makes all the difference. And my final superpower is chaos. And let me point out, it's really hard to find stock photos of chaos. So please bear with me here. And this one is probably like the underlying commonality between both the fear and the confusion. But my mind, it's like 1,000 different places all the time, every time. And if I let it go, it would never finish anything. It would just be this random flock of ravens like screaming and cawing and flying around. And what I've developed over the years, because of all of this chaos, that's a constant part of my inner dialogue. There's like always this crowd of voices that's trying to distract me from what it is that I'm trying to do. And very often it's criticizing. It's this very, very negative crowd that populates my mind. Because they're always there, I need to drive consensus for my internal voice. I need to forge order from chaos. Otherwise, I couldn't be able to succeed. And the fact that I've built this muscle, this ability for my inner dialogue, it again allows me to bring more clarity and more structure to the complex things that I do on a day-to-day basis for work. And if I think about a lot of my role, it's mentoring, it's teaching, it's explaining. And I never want to learn from someone who's like this gifted person who just gets it. It's like, oh, this is so easy. It's you just need to do this. It's like, I don't want to learn from that guy. I want to learn from the person who struggled. I want to learn from the person who cried while he was trying to figure out this concept where it just didn't make sense and he needed to come at it again and again, because that person is going to understand. That person is going to be able to explain it from multiple perspectives. That person is going to be able to empathize and help me find the thing that I need. It's kind of like from a leadership perspective. I don't want a leader that has always been in a position of power where, like, they grew up rich, they grew up strong, they grew up smart, and they've always known that they were destined to lead. I'm a born leader. I want a leader who is bullied. I want a leader who has struggled. I want a leader who has needed to fight for what she earned year after year and day after day, because those people will understand the people who aren't leaders yet, who are still struggling and who don't have an easy path either. And the chaos that I'm able to turn into order on a day-to-day basis couldn't have been possible without all of the chaos and the struggle that has defined so much of my life so far. And I have to ask myself, so thinking about this dystopian Marvel universe that we live in, does it need to be this hard? Are there other examples that we can look at? Probably. So I'm sort of spinning the genre around a little bit. But in addition to the superheroes in American TV and movies, there's this amazing Japanese anime series called My Hero Academia. And the basic premise sounds a lot like the X-Men, where there are some people that have special powers and there's a school that they go to learn how to be superheroes. But the big difference in the X-Men, the Professor X's school, it's all about where we can go to be away from society because society hates us. And in My Hero Academia, this is just a part of how school works, right? People with quirks, as they call it, they are recognized, and the schools help them find a place where they can contribute to the best effect for their, crime-fighting, supervillain defeating efforts. And if you look at the weird guy, he's in the bottom right-hand side, he looks like he's covered with Concord grape candies. So if you were asking yourself, is note-taking really a superpower? It's like, yeah, probably not, right? But this guy, he basically grows from his body these little sticky things that stick to things. And at first glance, it is the most worthless superpower you can imagine. It's like, geez, if I'm going to look like I'm covered in Concord grape candy all the time, I might as well have some cool superpower to compensate for it. But in this series, they're able to find, because they pay attention to what makes each person, each hero unique, they're able to find ways where everyone can contribute to the success of the whole. And this brings me to the final genre that I want to touch on. And this is a little known fact. Before Superman joined Justice League, he spent years as a kryptonite delivery guy. And I'm going to let that sink in there because obviously this isn't a true story. But imagine that. Imagine if this person, he's like these Deus Ex Machina guy that no other hero even needs to exist because Superman is this all-powerful thing, unbalancing every fight. Imagine if he did work, lifting and carrying around his one weakness, this one thing that was his bane, his nemesis. And this is where most of us are today. Or let me rephrase that. I can't speak for anyone but myself. I spent years as a kryptonite delivery person. So from 2011 to 2018, I worked as a feature PM. So I worked on SQL Server, I worked on Azure, I worked on the first version of Power BI, a lot of different things. And one of the things that makes a good PM is their ability to walk the halls. This is a very Microsoft PME phrase. So you go around, you talk to people, you understand what's going on, you make the connections, and you understand problems that need to be solved. You're talking to the developers that are writing the code to solve those problems. And it's part of what the PM does. And I literally can't think of something that freaks me out more than that. I don't understand people. It's really awkward and horrifying to me to go up and start a conversation. And I make it work. But if you're doing something day in and day out that is your kryptonite, you're not setting yourself up for success. And I wanted to circle back around for one last time to my amazing manager in my current role. There are some things that I do on a day-to-day basis that are hard for me. And I've been able to have a conversation with my manager to say, these things are really freaking hard. So if I do this, it might take me an hour. I'm going to be worthless for the rest of the day. And my manager, he's awesome at those things, right? It's like, oh, I can do this in my sleep. By having this open, honest communication, we are able to have our strengths complement each other's weaknesses. And this diversity enables us to be a high-performing rock star team, not because as individuals we're rock stars, but because we recognize and appreciate the strengths and weaknesses of each team member. And I wanted to wrap this up with and this is the superhero that I am. And getting back to my anxiety as anger, I often think about this scene from the Avengers where Bruce Banner is saying, well, that's my secret, Cap. I'm always angry because I'm always freaking angry, right? But the more that I think about it, Hulk smash is definitely not me. This is not me as a superhero. And I'm now thinking that it may be something more like Professor X, the mentorship, the assistance, the guidance. But I still have hair and I can't do a cool accent. So this is obviously not me. And the more that I thought about it, the more that I thought that this, if I had to pick one hero or one character that reflects how I think about the role that my strengths enable me to rock at, it's a medic. And this character is from Team Fortress Classic, I think. It's from some cooperative Valve computer game. But the medic in these team shooter games, they're not the ones with the big guns. They're not the ones that are going to kill the bad guys. They are the ones that are providing the support and enabling the other members of their team to do the amazing things. And the thing that I love the most about my job is that 90% of what I do is enabling the success of others through my efforts. I'm awesome at that. So I'm not great at taking compliments, but this is something I am unabashedly spectacular at. And every day that I can make a member of my team or a member of the broader Power BI team or a member of one of the customer teams that I work with, if I can spend 5 minutes and save them 5 hours, if I can spend a day and save them a month, wow, that's the sort of work, that type of engagement that I thrive on. And the thing that makes the difference is, for the first time in my career, the first time in my life, I am on a team where I am valued and recognized and rewarded for doing the things that I'm good at. And you can hear I'm choking up again, but it's that important. It's that life-changing to be in that sort of position. And as I think about what comes next, because I'm wrapping up the story, the session is almost over, but when I think about what's next, I think about the fact that even though the story that I've told today is true, it's very selective, right? Life is hard. We are living in an awful, challenging, just fucking dumpster fire of a world these days, and everything is harder than it should be. And I have a folder of screenshots of tweets I will never send. And this one is from 2 or 3 weeks ago. And I had recognized that, I've been so focused, so many deadlines, so much going on, at work and outside of work, and all of the things that I would do in my life to blow off steam, the fighting, the heavy metal concerts, the travel. It's like I can't do any of them. And it's been over a year since I've been able to do any of them. I'm just a wreck every fucking day. And it's important to remember that the only reason that I am able to tell this story, like emotionally able to share this vulnerability, is because I've found this safe place. It's because I've helped to make this safe place. And that I know that even when I'm so overwhelmed that like literally I like 50% of the time, a day doesn't go by that I'm not crying during a meeting because things are so awful. Like the world is so awful these days. And being able to talk about it, it changes the conversation. And for me, it has literally changed my life. I've had, again, I'm not going to name any names, but there is this amazing young woman that joined a sibling team at Microsoft the year before last. And she and I started working together. And after, like we'd be in meetings together every couple of weeks, like that sort of thing. So she reached out to me eventually and asked if I would be her mentor. And I was totally honored, and I immediately said yes. It was like the best thing that happened to me for a very long time. And I learned from those conversations with her that the image that she sees, the image that I project, my public self, my public face, I only show the success. And the success is real. Like I work hard. I've been doing this for a long time, and I'm good at what I do. And I want to share the success, and I don't want to share the struggle. But when she and I talk, and with the other people that have since reached out to ask me to help or to mentor them, when we're having these conversations, being able to say that the thing that you see, the success that you see, it's the tip of the iceberg. But everything that's under the surface of the water is pain and struggle and crying and tears and fighting and failure. That success only comes through those things. This is a conversation that we need to have more and more of, because if you only look at successful people saying, oh yeah, everything is great for me, it's like, fuck those people. It's not always easy. People need to struggle to find the success. And even though this may not be true of everyone, I've had enough people tell me directly that I believe that it's true for most of us, and that for us to find and unleash our own personal superpower, first of all, we need to be honest with ourselves and the people that care about us and the people that matter to us, to be honest about what's going on so that we can work together to find that safe space, to be able to say, I am too depressed to get out of bed today. Let's work together so that tomorrow is better. If you can't have those conversations, you can't move forward. And by having more openness and honesty, like this amazing event that we're having today, without these open, honest conversations, we won't be able to build those safe places. So I haven't saved as much time for Q&A at the end as I wanted to, but I wanted to say both thank you to everyone who has stuck with me, to Mala and Kathy for setting this up, and particularly to my family who will never see this, but to my family and to the people that I work with, both for supporting me and for being part of the system, the team, the collaboration that has enabled me to do the things that I've done. So Mala, I can't see anything in Zoom, so I'm going to ask, do we have any questions? Do we have any feedback? And how will we handle that Q&A?
Nothing short of awesome compliments, Matthew. I can read them out to you if you like, but no questions yet. But it's been awesome. It's been most awesome. Thank you.
Well, So I want to say I feel incredibly vulnerable. So this is a story and a side of myself that is not something that I typically share other than with people that I work with or that I know like closely and deeply in my day-to-day life. And I want to say thank you for the opportunity, and thank you for, for listening, and hopefully for each one of you being part of this broader solution to tell the stories, to normalize the struggles that so many of us go through, but that we've been told both explicitly and implicitly that there's something wrong with us for feeling this way, or there's something wrong with us for struggling with something that someone else may not struggle with. There is nothing wrong with us. This is who we are, and only by embracing and acknowledging our authentic selves can we figure out what the silver lining is, what the superpower is. Because when something is harder for us, we grow, we learn. It's through struggle. It's like I can't do this anymore because I haven't been to the gym in a year. But building muscle, lifting weights, or doing other resistance training, it's about breaking down what's there and building it back up stronger. And if you never push yourself, if you never go through the actual exercise in a consistent basis, you never grow, you never become stronger. When you have mental health challenges, when you're faced with anxiety or depression or ADHD, if you have autism spectrum behaviors that make it hard for you to interact with the people that are around you, the things that challenge you every day, they are the weights that you are lifting that you may never have realized. But hopefully, this afternoon or this weekend, you'll be able to reflect to see what superpowers have been growing inside you while you haven't been looking, while you've been too distracted by the struggles day to day. So that's everything that I've got.
What an incredibly positive way to frame it. Thank you. Incredibly positive way to frame it.
Well, thank you very much, Mala, and thanks, Kathy, as well.
Thank you.
Thanks, Matthew. Thanks for just opening your heart to us. This has just been amazing.
Well, this venue is